The man who wanted to learn the language of animals. In the name of God. One day, a young man went to Moses and asked him to teach him the language of animals. Human beings are always talking about food and using their language to deceive each other. I'm eager to learn the language of animals. Perhaps I can learn something from them to help me strengthen my faith. Forget about it. What can one learn from animal language? Ask God to give you enlightenment. Learning the language of animals will not help you increase your faith. As a matter of fact, it will put you in trouble, said Prophet Moses firmly. The more Moses forbade him, the more he wanted to learn the language of animals. Every time the young man saw Moses, he begged Moses to teach him the animal language. Again, Moses always told him that it would not be useful, but the man was not convinced. Eventually, God asked Moses to fulfill the young man's wish and teach the young man the language of a few domestic animals, as he, the most generous of all, never declines anyone's prayers. Learning the language of birds and dogs, the young man was as happy as a clam. One day, the young man was in the yard looking at the chickens when he heard an argument between a dog and a rooster. It seemed that the rooster had eaten all the bread that the young man's servant had thrown into the yard for all the animals to eat. The watchdog looked so angry and barking. The young man went closer to listen to what they were saying. The watchdog said, "It wasn't very nice of you to have eaten all the pieces of bread. You can eat wheat, barley, almost everything, but I can't. You should have left at least a piece for me. It's not fair." Feeling guilty, the rooster looked at the watchdog and said, "Don't worry, God will give you something better in return tomorrow. Tomorrow the master's horse will die, and you can have it all by yourself." When the young man heard that, he immediately took the horse to the market and sold it at a good price. The next day, the rooster again did the same thing and took the pieces of bread and left nothing for the dog to have. The watchdog came closer and said, "You liar, where is that horse you told me all about yesterday?" The rooster said, "I've never told a lie in my whole life. The horse died somewhere else. The master sold it yesterday. I'll tell you what, tomorrow his donkey will die, and you'll have a lot of meat to eat for your lunch. Then you'll be happy." The next day, again the watchdog came barking to the rooster, calling him the biggest liar on the earth. "The master sold the donkey yesterday, but this time his servant will die, and the master is going to give dinner at the night of his funeral," said the rooster. The young man who was nearby heard this and sold his servant at once. He was so happy, thanking God for saving him a lot of money on 3 occasions. "Thank God, I've had no misfortunes since I learned the language of dogs and birds," he thought. The next day, the dog was very angry again and making fun of all the predictions that the rooster had been making. "How long do you plan to keep lying like this?" said the dog. The rooster said, "How could you say such a thing to me? We roosters never tell a lie. God has chosen us to crow when it's time for morning prayer. If we were liars, God wouldn't have trusted us for that." After a few seconds, the rooster continued, "Now listen, it's his turn this time. He played it smart by selling his horse, donkey, and even his servant." But this time he can't get away with this. Tomorrow he will die, and his family will kill a cow for his funeral ceremony. The young man couldn't hear the rest. He was shocked. He ran quickly to Moses and told him the story. He begged Moses to help him. "Why don't you go to the market and sell yourself too? You've done that to the horse, the donkey, and the servant, haven't you? You put the suffering on others to avoid any losses. You know how to do that, don't you? Now you see why I forbade you. I'd seen the end from the very beginning," Moses said. The young man confessed, "I knew I'd been a terrible person. Now I know that loss of money and misfortunes were good for my soul. I'm so ashamed of myself. Please do something for me. I'm dying." "There is nothing I can do now. Once an arrow is released from a bow, it can't be returned. But I'll pray for you and certainly ask God to bless your soul in the hereafter," Moses said. Being scared of death, the young man got scared and started vomiting. His legs were shaking. A few people came to help him stop shaking his legs, but it was useless. The young man died at once. Moses prayed for the young man and asked God to have mercy on him. God told Moses that he would bring him back to life if he wanted. Moses thanked God for his kindness and said that it was not really necessary to do that. "After all, we come to this world to live, and after a few years we must die," he said.